Hello, my friends! The return to Paris after Brazil was not easy. It was difficult to find places to exhibit my paintings, and I asked everyone I met who had connection with wealthy people if they would be willing to represent me. Many agreed, but did not return my paintings. A few, however, sold me a number of them which allowed me to leave. I could no longer bear to live on the 10th floor of these buildings on Rue du Commandant Mouchotte above the Montparnasse train station, and we moved to the 15th for a small apartment on the 5th floor without an elevator, as I had become so allergic to these modern buildings. As I didn't have room to paint, I sublet a room at a friend's house, Michel Gianetto, who had a decisive influence of the rest of my life. He was an electronic engineer, but no longer practiced this profession because he owned a restaurant, Le Baltard. In the morning, he would have breakfast watching me paint, and one day he told me this decisive phrase, probably inspired by destiny. With painting, you can travel in the imagination. But now, with cinema and television, people are used to images that move, and electronics could make the painting move. He told me about various electronic solutions that would not prove applicable. But he had planted a seed in my head, and after a night of insomnia, the only one I had, I found the solution that is still the same. I painted on a translucent surface, first plexiglass, then a back projection canvas. Retouching was impossible, and I had to start all over again when there was a defect. I would place the paint on a flat box 7 cm deep, in which I would build another composition of small lamps that I had to tint one by one. Then came the electronic composition that would give life to the painting on music. Right from the start, I felt that it had to be the music that caused this animation. The first painting, Symphonie Spatiale, which was very difficult to realize as the questions were so great, was an immediate success and was sold 15 days after its creation to a princess of Saudi Arabia. What an encouragement to continue in this new direction. For this first try, I used commercially available electronics kits. But if the result was already interesting, it lacked the movement to keep the product show captivating longer. I looked for a way to fix it, and ended up meeting an electronics engineer who was a renowned specialist in light animation, Destiny. Together, we designed a modular system of electronic circuits to transform the painting into a ballet of light choreographed by music. To sell these paintings of a new kind, totally rejected by the art world, I turned to second-hand agents. That is to say, anyone with connections who could buy them from me, as their price was, by necessity, much higher. I had a more comfortable period financially, although I had to reinvest in equipment constantly. I never met the customers. I learned that most of them came from the world of show business, songs, and even a famous television presenter, Yves Mourouzi. There was even the King of Morocco, Hassan II, who bought me two. That is to say that my paintings were very attractive. When we designed the electronic modules, the engineer asked me how many points I wanted per element. I had no idea. So I asked him what the possibilities were, and then I concentrated on the definition of the numbers from 1 to 10 that I found in a book on Mew, the Lost Continent. Completely irrational, but I had no other options. I knew that this choice was fundamental and would definitely guide the rest of my creations. Did Mu only exist 10,000 years ago? In any case, its meaning of numbers seems to precede all others such as cabals, numerology, tarot, and other disciplines, since it forms a sentence that says what we do on earth and that we find scattered in these other traditions. I develop it in my book. It was the first time I used such information that was rejected by the scientific world, and which was the foundation of all my subsequent research. During the preparatory year for the architecture admission competition, I continued to participate in the brass band, but I had swept the bass too bulky for a toulousiphone or jazz flute, a kind of people without hole with a piston to play the melody. As for saying it was melodious, we played in various receptions where the good society liked to be heckled by the student of fine art, Beaux-Arts. These big bourgeois, uptight neighborhoods waited impatiently for us to show them our ass. We should have seen their faces at this reception, where there were generals and prefects in large uniforms, when after having interpreted several pieces, they were told that we were going to sing the Beaux-Arts hymns, Le Pompier, the fireman. I let you discover it in my book. Between the brass band, project to return, drawing lessons, I didn't have time to be interested in Pretty Girl. I have absolutely had to succeed in the September assignment to be able to work in an architecture firm. The ancients had warned me to pass first the admission before going to work in agency, because we could spend years before succeeding this context so difficult. There were 4 tests, and we had to wait for the result of the first one before we could get to the next one, which didn't help us relax. The first one, a classical architecture project in 12 hours, was followed by the history of architecture, then a very difficult test of ancient plaster, drawing in 8 hours, and finally a mathematics test. For the September session, I put myself to work intensely. I had a good friend from another workshop with whom I took drawing lessons. Before the test, we managed to get the subject, and I thought I would fail. It was the most difficult, an antique vase with scrolls and lots of characters revolving around it. Fortunately, the old professor knew it perfectly and showed us how best to express it by increasing here or decreasing there. On the day of the event, since we could move around, I saw that John Noel and I expressed it in the same way. But I had had trouble with my charcoal, and it wasn't as good as I could have. While my friend's was perfect, he got 19 out of 20. Historical note, where the simple act of obtaining the average was already a feat. I got 14, which was great for moving on to math, which was not my strong suit. We had to study integrals and differentials, whereas in the practice of the profession, we only need the rule of 3. By dint of hard work, I passed this test and finished the competition well enough to be able to enter the second class of architecture at the Beaux-Arts, and thus be able to earn a living by working in agencies and learn the profession in practice. To be continued.